Resident Evil Requiem is pretty dope, but also a little dumb. Hello everyone, I am the Nash Blast, and today I want to give my review of Resident Evil 9 Requiem. Now, before I say anything else about this game, let me explain my perspective a little bit, and my relationship with this franchise. I am by no means a Resident Evil diehard. I've not played every game, not even all the mainline ones, but in recent years I've begun to dip my toes into the RE universe, starting my journey with Resident Evil 7, Biohazard, and since then I've only completed the original RE4, Village, and I'm currently working my way through RE2 Remake. I've also tried a couple other ones like the first and fifth games for a little bit, but wasn't really vibing with them all that much. I probably will take another look at 5 though at some point. But pretty much ever since 7 came out, I have been excited for every new mainline release, and Requiem is the first game I've bought for full price on launch in a long while. The only other games that I've done this with that have been worth it in the past 5 to 6 years has probably been Elden Ring. So yeah, I was pretty hyped for this game, and I think it's important to know this and any background a reviewer may have with a series when they are making a review on, said series. Just so you can see if the reviewer is like a game journalist who has never played an RE game before, or someone who's a fanatic who has played every game, or someone like me who is just your average man. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the actual review of the game. Starting with, is it worth $70, and did I get my money's worth? Well, personally, I think it was worth it, being someone who has been waiting for the game, and I got pretty much what I expected out of it, and a lot more. But someone who isn't too familiar with the franchise, but did hear that it was a good game to check out, I'd recommend waiting for a sale because $70 is pretty pricey for a game that, depending on who you are, you could finish in like 9 hours, maybe even less. It took me about 12 hours to beat it, but that's because I'm pretty dumb, and I backtrack a lot. Typically I enjoy games that you get a lot of time out of, especially if they're expensive. I think if you get about an hour per dollar you spend on a game, then it was pretty much well worth it. Like, I put about well over 100 hours into Elden Ring and paid $60 for it, so yeah, that one was just beautiful. RE9 though may be on the shorter side, even though compared to other RE games it's probably longer. But unfortunately, every AAA game that comes out nowadays is going to be at least $70. Unfortunately, that's just how things are. But if you are interested, I'd suggest starting with another Resident Evil game, especially one that may be on sale because they go on sale a lot. I mean, you can get RE8 for sometimes $20, maybe even less, and it is frequently on sale. It is a really fun Resident Evil game, and I recommend playing it first if you want the first-person scary elements with the cool action stuff on the side, like how this game does. Other ones I'd recommend are RE4 Classic or the Remake because it's the next closest thing to the action sections in this game, and is considered the best one by a lot of people. Or I'd also recommend playing RE2 for story reasons, because there's a lot of callbacks from that game, as well as key story relevance. Luckily, I played enough of the second one to understand some things, but there were still some story points I didn't get because I didn't get to that point in the second game. But most of this isn't even relevant until around the second half of the game, but honestly you don't have to know these story elements, but it does help. But I did enjoy the story in this game very much, especially the Leon segments. But I enjoyed the Grace segments as well. This game does combine two different gameplays, and I think is the perfect blend for any of the RE games I've played. You have the terrifying first-person sections with Grace, a character who is new to all this shit, and then you switch to the third-person badass Leon, who is the action hero type who's been putting up with this shit for close to 30 years. As far as gameplay, I enjoyed it very much. And the only gripe I really have is that I wanted more. And typically a game that leaves you wanting more is better than a game that makes you glad there is no more. You know what I'm saying? That is my overall opinion on if the game is worth it or not. But now I want to get into some other things that deal with story spoilers. If you don't want any of that, click off now. Otherwise, let's get into the real meat of the video. By the way, any footage I do show unfortunately isn't mine, and I will give the proper credits. I play this game on PS5 since it's a new gen game and all, and I don't think my computer can run it at its max performance. And I don't really have a good capture card or anything, and I'll probably have some other gameplay though up in the background for most of the video, maybe like RE4 or something, I don't know. But anyways, yeah, the story was awesome with interesting new characters, and also expanding on some returning ones. Leon and Sherry both return from older games, and the new character, Grace, is the daughter of another existing character named Alyssa Ashcroft. I didn't really play the game she was in, but good for her. Alyssa is, however, at the beginning of the game, revealed to have been murdered, and one of the most brutal deaths to any important character in any Resident Evil game, at least the ones I've played. This game has a couple very dark, brutal scenes that are crazy even by Resident Evil standards. Like, I know Resident Evil is dark as shit, but there's a scene around the midpoint that had my jaw drop, and I didn't think they had the balls to actually do it. Actual child death. That's something you don't see in a whole lot of games or movies. That scene, plus the scene of the mom dying with just the realistic screams of the daughter's voice actress, just bone chilling. All of Grace's side of things is extremely dark and twisted, and even the zombies are some of the creepiest and saddest takes I've seen. I may have not played all the games, but lately I have been kind of a lore hound, and I've been watching a ton of videos on all things Resident Evil. And what I have seen is that these zombies are unlike most, and keep some of their traits of when they were normal, but they literally just can't stop themselves. Some apologizing as they try to kill you, which is just pretty haunting. The whole location of the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center is awesome, and spooky in all the right ways. The photorealism and hallways with dim lighting, as well as the moans and growls of the zombies in the building, just gives off a fantastic eerie vibe, reminiscent of RE7, except the creatures here are a lot more interesting. Not only do you have all the different zombies with different personalities like the chef and the singers, but you also have a giant gross zombie named Chunk, and when he pops up for the first time, I almost shit myself. Grace also has a new mechanic in her sections, where she can scoop up infected blood, acting as an almost currency, which you can use for making supplies like bullets. How does it even work? How do you make bullets out of blood? Fuck if I know, but it's cool, and sticking the syringe in the meatball bucket is pretty satisfying. This area is probably the longest Grace section, and is pretty phenomenal, and Leon's stuff around this zone is pretty cool too. However, Leon doesn't get his big section until we get to Raccoon City. Some stuff about Raccoon City I love, but others kind of drag it down a little bit. Leon plays very differently, and even having his own point system when he kills enemies, and he can use points to buy materials and upgrades for his weapons. It's also cool as hell exploring the collapsed Raccoon City and seeing areas from RE2 again. But I can't help but really want to move on from this area after we get to a certain point, around the halfway point I would say, when we were just gunning down a bunch of annoying zombies like the blister heads and also gun zombies in the bland skyscraper kind of construction zone sections. They kind of go on for a while, especially the part with the missile launchers, dude. Fuck that part. Worst part of the game. But overall, Leon and Grace are the perfect balance, and they both get their time to shine in the last area of the game, the Ark. But like those missile launcher parts, there are some other gripes I have with the game as well, some things that I harbor negative feelings towards. First of all, the story is interesting and good from a Resident Evil standpoint. Like, the storylines from these other games I've played, like 7 and 8, aren't the most well-written stories, but still interesting. Same can kind of be said about this one. The story's cool, and I am very interested in it, but at the same time, there are some things that either don't make sense, are predictable and bland, or just have, like, no explanation at all. Like, the biggest plot point that makes almost no sense is at the very beginning of the game. Why does the FBI send Grace to the scenes of the murders alone? The same exact place her mother got brutally murdered in front of her just a few years ago. I mean, this whole situation just makes absolutely zero sense. And I was certain that this FBI director dude was gonna be in on it. Like he was being controlled or something. But no, he's normal and just sends this poor woman to go do this by herself. A person who seems to have almost zero fieldwork experience to go investigate a crime scene she already has PTSD around. And then of course, who could have guessed, she gets attacked and kidnapped. Another thing that's crazy is she legit gets bitten in a cutscene. Now I know RE characters get bit all the time in gameplay, it's just how video games work, but in cutscenes, even RE7 and 8 went back to explain why Ethan could take so much damage and amputation. But nope, Grace gets bit hard from a zombie carrying a pretty contagious virus, which I thought would also get explained because her blood is like the cure or something. But again, that's just my theory that was proven false. Spoiler alert again, but the big twist is that she is completely normal. Also, another thing I gotta say is the voice actress, like I said before, is really good. Top tier even. But the character's constant stuttering with every single thing she says, along with her constant moans in the game, was just driving me a little crazy. Could have settled down with the moans there. Some of them don't even sound like she's in pain, if you catch my drift. But yeah, man, the voice acting in this game is overall pretty good. Even the villains were casted perfectly. The main villain being very nice to listen to for some reason. Almost ASMR-like. Dr. Victor Gideon has a silky smooth voice for being a horrible, grotesque zombie monster man. He as a character was interesting, along with the side villain that comes out of pretty much nowhere, Zeno, A character that even I, who hasn't really played any games he was in, immediately thought he was Wesker. But turns out, nope, he just looks like, acts like, and has the same powers of. And they never really explained Zeno at all, too, like, and they killed him pretty quickly at the end there without explaining anything about him. Gideon said something about, he's just an imitation, and that's it. That's it. One thing I thought was pretty neat, though, was the ending. And the 2 different endings you can get. And apparently I got an ending most people didn't get first, the bad ending, where I follow Leon's orders to destroy the device or whatever, which leads to a very dark ending overall, where Leon actually dies and Grace leaves with no final boss fight at all. I don't know why Victor Gideon didn't show up in this ending, but whatever. And then the game just goes directly to a bleak credit screen. No fancy outro or anything. So for those who wanted a dark and edgy ending, well, you got it. However, it is obviously not the canon ending, considering how the other ending has the final boss fight happening and a happy ending for all, well, except for Zeno. It's a pretty decent ending, except for the fact that the boss pisses me off. If you're gonna have a giant ass boss, give me a little bit more arena room. You know, you got no room to do anything, and this guy, a little annoying. I didn't really like it. And one of the worst things, honestly, and I don't know if this makes me a bad person or anything, but I kind of hate how they add a little thing at the end where they go back and revive the dead kid, you know, doubling down on the bleakest death in the series. At first when it happened, I thought it was like really well done, you know, when you play as Leon and have to put the monster girl down as Grace is like yelling at you to stop. It's a very powerful moment. But, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. She's a monster. She's a zombie monster. It's probably the most sad and intense thing you have to do in pretty much, I would think, any Resident Evil game. I didn't actually believe she was dead until after it all went down, and I was like, whoa. What the hell? I was in utter disbelief, but kind of relieved they went with that choice, you know? Like, you don't normally see this in movies and TV where a kid will die. And in a world like Resident Evil, you would probably see this shit a lot. This is the type of stuff that is necessary to show, you know, how horrible this shit is. But nope, at the end they have to reveal that she isn't dead and they can cure her. Sure, you know, it's happy and her and Grace get to live a wonderful life afterwards. But I still can't help but feel a little cheated on that moment where we have to put her down. Reversing that is my biggest hang up on the game, honestly. It's like it is the biggest thing that annoyed me, but I guess it is what it is. With all that being said, it is kind of funny how Grace doesn't even mention that she murdered the other little girl that turned into a monster. That one legit melted into stew, laying on the ground as a puddle. Think about it, that was just a little innocent girl like the other one, just trying to protect the other little girl. Pretty wild. But the whole orphanage storyline and all the experiments on little girls and stuff is still really dark, don't get me wrong. And the section where you play as a little girl is the scariest part of the game. Even though I don't really understand why all the other little evil girls turned into glowing red-eyed monsters. I'm a little lost on that one, boys, I won't lie. Also, that one guy the little girls kill at the beginning of that segment had the dumbest death I've ever seen in anything. Dude was surrounded by slow-moving children that want to kill him, and this man sits down to their level and just lets them slowly walk over and break his neck with no fight at all. Bro, literally their only means to kill you apparently is to break your neck. Just stay standing up and run away. You know, it's simple, but that's the horror genre, I guess. There's always got to be at least one dumbass. But dumb isn't always bad, though. Because the coolest and my favorite part of the game is pretty dumb. And that's the motorcycle chase sequence with Leon, where we are driving through a crumbling raccoon city, fighting giant zombie dogs, dodging rockets, and using a falling skyscraper as a ramp to launch off of, and then have a motorcycle standoff with the main villain of the game. All ending in a classic Leon one-liner. I mean, what could you not love about that? It's utterly insane to a level that it's just entertaining. This whole part is just the definition of radical. Anything that really has to do with Leon or Dr. Gideon is pretty good, except for the final boss fight. That one's still a little iffy on me. Most of the boss fights in the game are decent besides that one though. A big issue I do have with them, and this goes for most of the enemies in the game, is that a ton of them are pretty basic with not too much interesting lore behind them or even unique names. Like the main cool enemy is just called the Girl, and she's the main stalker type enemy of the whole game, and her name is just the Girl. And the lore behind her is pretty much that she's the sister of the other clone girl, and it goes about as far as that. But we also have a giant spider that feels pretty random and is just, you know, a giant spider. We also have a giant plant boss, like the one from Arkham Asylum. And then we fight with Mr. X from Resident Evil 2 out of nowhere, which he's cool and the callback is appreciated, but it does kind of come out of nowhere. At least with Resident Evil 8, every enemy and boss made me want to look up lore videos on them and learn about these characters. But many of these bosses and enemies in this game, I don't really care to look up lore about. And some of the characters that would have interesting lore just doesn't have any, like Xeno. Like, who the hell is he? Even that random soldier boss fight, which the community is pretty much certain is a character named Hunk, but the game just calls him Commander. Doesn't drop his name or anything. He's just a commander. That's it. That's all we get. But, I mean, that's pretty much all the main things that were on my mind. All the issues I had, as well as the things I liked. And all in all, I still had a blast playing through the game, and I am glad I experienced it firsthand. And I am extremely excited for where the franchise goes next, whether it's DLC for this game or the fabled RE10. God knows when that's going to drop. Anyways, this was a quick review I wanted to throw out there because I had some thoughts I wanted to get off my chest. I kept hearing this is the best Resident Evil game to date from different people, and that's one of the reasons why I bought it and played it. And I think it is pretty good. It's definitely in my top 3, but then again, I've only completed like 4 of the games and played 2 of the others, so I'm not the best judge. But it does take away some of the best mechanics from 2 games that I think are overall superior, being RE4 and 8, which I can see myself replaying those a lot more. But yeah, that is my nasty review of Resident Evil Requiem. And I do hope that you enjoyed. And if you agree or disagree on what I said or have any other opinions, let me know in the comments. And with all that being said, I hope you guys have a nasty night, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.